I would like to call to order this regular meeting of the Show Low Planning and Zoning Commission for Tuesday, August 9th, 2022. Roll call shows that all commissioners are present. Next, we will have the invocation given by Commissioner Roberts, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Lewis. If you'd like to join us, please stand.
Our kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we're grateful to have the opportunity to meet tonight as community members and as a commission to try to perform services to the community. We ask Thee to bless all in attendance, that we can be considerate and compassionate towards all that our actions tonight might affect or involve. We ask Thee to help us to make good choices and good decisions that are in the best interest of the community as a whole. We are thankful for the rain that You have blessed this community with. We're grateful that we've been protected from wildfires. We're thankful for all of our first responders and people who service our community. We're thankful for our city staff and all of the workers that help us to keep this community running and looking as good as it does. We're grateful for the spirit that we have in this community, the spirit of togetherness and inclusiveness and of wanting what is best. We ask for Thy blessing to help us with these decisions tonight. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is old business. Before we get into that, it's great to see so many people here tonight. And there will, as part of our old business here, be a time for public comment. It'll be toward the end. We're going to hear a presentation on the staff summary report, followed by a short presentation on the applicant. And then I'll give further instructions toward the end regarding the public comment period. And so our first item of old business is consideration of conditional use permit 602-04-249 submitted by Shad Housley of Legacy Community Homes to allow for a residential home for disabled children who require 24-hour nursing care located at 1400 North Fairway Drive, Show Low, Arizona, that being APN 309-31-169 and 170A. I also want to note that this item is old business because it was rescheduled. It was originally scheduled for the July 26th, 2022 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. With that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Spectelcar.
Thank you, Vice Chairman and Commissioners. On June 30th, 2022, Shad Housley of Legacy Community Homes submitted a conditional use permit, or CUP, to allow for a residential home for disabled children who require 24-hour nursing care located at 1400 North Fairway Drive, that being APN 309-31-169 and 170A. The applicant has indicated that this will not be a group home for alcohol or drug rehabilitation, but for children who are severely handicapped and are mostly bedridden. This item was originally scheduled for the July 26, 2022 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. However, the meeting was unexpectedly canceled due to a lack of quorum. Staff, as well as the applicant, were available for questions, and a total of approximately 30 people were present. The home has 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and is 1,979 square feet in size and was built in 1971. The subject property is 16,553 square feet in size and is zoned R115. At single-family residential, manufactured homes excluded, 15,000 square feet. A group home for the handicapped is a conditional use in the R1-15 zone. Other conditional uses in this zone include an additional dwelling for use as a guest house, churches, public utility buildings, temporary sales offices, private schools, golf courses, hospitals, police stations and fire stations, bed and breakfasts. Uses in the R115, permitted uses in the R115 zone include single-family dwellings, attached guest units, schools, parks, home occupations such as accountants, attorneys, counselors, in-home childcare of up to 5 children, musical instruction, tutoring, recreation areas, and centers. Home occupations permit no more than 2 business visitors an hour or 8 a day, and no more than 2 deliveries of products or materials per day, or 10 per week, excluding postal deliveries, are permitted. According to City Code, Chapter 19.05.010, a group home for the handicapped is defined as a dwelling shared by 4 or more handicapped persons, including resident staff, who live together as a single housekeeping unit, and in a long-term family-like environment in which staff persons provide care, education, and participation in community activities for the residents, with the primary goal of enabling the residents to live as independently as possible in order to reach their maximum potential. As used herein, the term handicap shall mean having 1. A physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more of such person's major life activities so that such person is incapable of living independently. 2. A record of having such having such impairment. Or 3. Being regarded as having such an impairment. However, handicap shall not include current illegal use or addiction to a controlled substance, nor shall it include any person whose residency in a home would constitute a direct threat to the health and safety of other individuals. The term group home for the handicapped shall not include alcoholism or drug treatment centers, work facilities for convicts or ex-convicts, or other housing facilities serving as an alternative to incarceration. According to the Arizona Department of Health Services, a group home means a residential facility that is licensed to serve more than 4 minors at any one time, that is licensed by the state for the Department of Health Services. On June 15th, 2022, a pre-application meeting was held with the applicant, the building official, Timber Mesa Fire and Medical District, the city engineer, and the Planning and Zoning Department. Minor improvements will be needed to make the home compliant with American with Disabilities Act, ADA, which will require a building permit. The applicant was also informed that due to the occupancy of the home, a sprinkler system is required. City Code Chapter 19.20.060 requires that notices for conditional use permits be sent a minimum of 10 days prior to the meeting. Notwithstanding the notice requirements set forth in this section, the failure of any person or entity to receive such notice shall not constitute grounds for any court to invalidate the action for which the notice was given. Staff posted a notice on the subject property and mailed letters to all property owners within 300 feet of the subject property on July 15th, 2022. On July 20th, 2022, staff met with a group of neighbors regarding their concerns with the proposed group home. These included increased noise, traffic, on-street parking, a fence that could be a potential escape hazard, ponds along the golf course being a potential drowning hazard, that it is a commercial business and not a family, the transitory nature of the residence, including the 24-hour operation of the home, with several employees and medical providers coming to the house each day, a decline in property values, the disturbance of flashing lights and sirens from ambulances and emergency vehicles, a need for additional lighting and security cameras, a lack of recreation activities for the residents of the home, the incompatibility of the group home with the neighborhood, and utilizing a home as a business is against the deed restrictions for their subdivision, and how the CUP will be enforced. Staff reposted the property and sent letters to all property owners within 300 feet of the subject property, notifying them that the meeting had been rescheduled for August 9th, 2022. Staff has had numerous conversations with concerned individuals related to the CUP application. Staff has attached several letters from neighbors expressing their concerns and a petition with 148 signatures from neighbors in the area indicating their opposition to the proposed group home at this location. Copies of documents received prior to noon on August 5th, 2022 have been attached. The city's general plan includes a housing element with several goals and objectives, with emphasis on mixed use, greater density, and affordability in choice. One of the goals is to maintain residential consistency, balance, and spacious appearance with an objective of providing a land use plan and zoning that strive to achieve compatibility with dissimilar uses next to each other. Further, the goal of maintaining residential consistency, balance, and spaciousness includes housing for families, active retired persons, and special needs populations. This is addressed by encouraging a full range of shelter choices. The Department of Justice, DOJ, and the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, are jointly responsible for enforcing the Federal Fair Housing Act. The Act prohibits discrimination in housing based on race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, or national origin. The Act provides housing-related policies and practices that exclude or otherwise discriminate against individuals because of protected characteristics. A DOJ document outlining the Fair Housing Act has been attached. The local land use laws and practices and the application of the Fair Housing Act issued by the DOJ and HUD dated November 10th, 2016 states, when enacting or applying zoning land use laws, state and local government may not act because of the fears, prejudices, stereotypes, or unsubstantiated assumptions that community members may have about a current or prospective residence because of the resident's protected characteristics. Doing so violates the Act, even if the officials themselves do not personally share such bias. Additionally, a local government may not block a group home or deny a requested reasonable accommodation in response to neighbors' stereotypical fears or prejudices about persons with disabilities or particular type of disability. It is staff's opinion that this submittal falls under the protection of the Federal Fair Housing Act. The current zoning of the surrounding properties includes to the north, south, east, and west, R115. The current land uses of the surrounding properties include to the north and south, Shola Country Club Estates subdivision, to the east, the Shola Country Club Estates and for Fairway 4 subdivision, and to the west, the Country Club Manor Unit 1 subdivision. Transmittal memos were sent to all affected agencies. Applicable comment received include from the Timber Mesa Fire and Medical District. The home shall comply with the 2018 International Residential Code, and an approved sprinkler system shall be required. After reviewing the zoning ordinance, standards for the review, findings of fact, discussions with the applicant, and because the request is consistent with the City of Shola General Plan, staff recommends that the City of Shola Planning and Zoning Commission approve Conditional Use Permit 602-04249 submitted by Shad Housley of Legacy Community Homes to allow for a residential home for disabled children who require 24-hour nursing care located at 1400 North Fairway Drive, that being APN 21031-169A and 170A, subject to the following conditions. 1. Prior to allowing residents at this location, all development shall comply with applicable federal, state, and local requirements, including Fire Code, Americans with Disabilities Act, Arizona Division of Developmental Disabilities, and Arizona Department of Health Services licensing requirements for group homes. 2. A 6-foot solid material fence shall be installed on the north, south, and west property lines in accordance with city code. 3. There shall be no on-street parking. All staff and visitors must park on the property and out of the public right-of-way. 4. As stipulated by the applicant, this group home shall not be utilized for drug or alcohol rehabilitation. 5. This COP is non-transferable. Any change in ownership would require the new owner to comply with all applicable code requirements in place at the time of ownership change. The applicant has authorized Mr. Morgan to speak on behalf of Legacy Community Homes. Mr. Morgan would like to provide a summary of why they've requested a CUP for this location. After this time, staff, as well as the representatives of the applicant, are available for questions.
Thank you.
Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to meet with you tonight.
Excuse me, can you turn up the volume? We can't hear back here.
Okay, these aren't speakers. These are just microphones to record it. So we'll try to talk louder, but they're not microphones.
So as stated,
They want to come up.
my name is Jeff Morgan. I am the Chief Operating Officer of Legacy Community Homes, representing Shad Housley tonight, who had another engagement and was not able to be here. I think everything that we have to say was said in what was in there, but I'll reiterate a couple of points. It's our feeling that every child deserves a place to call home, a place that they can feel safe and flourish while having their unique individual needs met. And that was one of the purposes for creating this home. The mission of the Division of Developmental Disabilities is to empower individuals with developmental disabilities to lead self-directed, healthy, and meaningful lives. And we concur with that. That is the purpose for the home, is it to help these individuals be acclimated into a community and not separated from it. These types of homes service, and these are what DDD has in there right on their homepage. The services that they use that qualify them for the division is autism, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, and cognitive or intellectual disabilities. Our group home specializes in offering care to children that need 24-hour nursing assistance for complex medical needs, which some of the things that were of concern, they will not be running the neighborhood. Most of them, as stated in what was shared to begin with, is most of them are severely handicapped and will need that 24-hour care. That's why they're there in the home, is they need that care. As a residential home for the children, this home affords the children to have a place that meets their unique medical needs, keeps them close to their families, and provides them a safe environment to grow up in. And so why are we here? Why did we choose this home? Rural Arizona often fails to meet the needs of children with developmental disabilities. There is no other home in this northern area that is doing what we're presenting to you here and wanting to do. These needs include residential housing, 24-hour care, and quality therapies such as occupational and physical, as well as nursing services. Children in need of such services in underserved areas are separated from their families and sent to metropolitan areas several hours away, straining the family and the connection. The purpose behind Legacy Community Homes is the very thing that I believe that this community represents, and that is family. And the reason that we brought this before and have chosen this home is because of that up here on this mountain. These kids, we have a couple of them that we've had for numerous years in our home. If they were not with us, the families would not be able to see them. They can't travel down where they would have been, which is in the valley. And so the intent is to bring those kids back home so that these families can be reunited. We certainly could address, and I'm going to leave it, if questions are answered, we'll be more than happy to come address, but some of the concerns that are out there are just not simply going to happen. This will not be drugs or alcohol. That's not the type of kids that'll be in this home. We will comply with everything that has been asked of us in this conditional use permit. And above that, that's our intent. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Now I will open up to the commission for questions. We'll start with questions for staff. Commissioner Adams.
Yeah, on the paperwork submitted by the applicant, it says that the home would be limited to 6 children, but in the staff paperwork, it says that it'll be up to 5. We get clarification if it's 5 or 6?
If it says 5 in the staff paperwork, that's incorrect. What the applicant is proposing is to have up to 6 children with the required staffing to go along with that. There is, and this might be where the question arises, currently under city code, we allow home occupations as a permitted use. Not much you have to do in order to qualify for one of those. You basically come in and apply for a business permit, and you would be able to operate under the home occupation requirements. We do allow for, as a home occupation, babysitting out of your home. And I believe that referred to up to 5, including your own children. So if I have 2 of my own, I could watch 3 more. That would be a permitted use, no requirements to come to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you.
Commissioner Roberts?
Do we have any off-the-wall estimates of the percentage or the number of homes in Sholo that are running businesses out of their home now, especially now with everything being done remotely for a lot of people?
I think you're asking 2 different questions. One would be how many have actually applied for a home occupation permit versus how many are running businesses out of their home total. They're obviously 2 different numbers. Ms. Vector-Cotter, do you have an idea of how many home occupation permits?
I'd say probably maybe 20 to 30% of our business permits.
20 to 30% of our residential properties?
No, of our business permits.
So our business permits, we have about 1,000 active business permits.
Mm-hmm.
So 20 to 30% of the active business permits would be home occupations. So you're probably talking 200 to 300 that we know of.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for staff from the commission? I have one. So it describes in the, going kind of back to Commissioner Adams' question about the number of children. Is that 6 number limited by, because it didn't seem to be limited in the conditions put on the application? Would that, because it was part of the application, would that kind of put it as part of the conditions, or are there other factors regarding the fire department or other agencies that said 6 was the maximum for that particular residence?
So 6 is based on the state licensing requirements and the size of the home and staffing requirements. As far as the second part of that question, as part of city code, any representations made by the applicant as part of the proceedings are considered binding. So for them to put in their application that they will have 6, that would be the maximum. They couldn't come back later and say, we're going to do 7 or 8 or 10 or 12 without coming back through this process. If the commission felt it was necessary, that could certainly be added as a condition of approval, just to kind of re-emphasize that number is the maximum.
Thank you. Commissioner Roberts.
I have one comment that I feel compelled to make, and that is because I live close, I live in this neighborhood, and because there's 11 houses between my house and the subject property. Because of my proximity to that, I need to let everyone know so that you're fully aware that I did have visits from neighbors that came to me to try to convince me to vote one way or another, and I conveyed to them that I could not discuss with them what my intentions were as far as a vote, but that I was willing to listen to what they had to say, which I did. But I needed to make sure that I don't have any violations of the open meeting law by not disclosing that I have had some ex parte communication with neighbors. Many of the names on the petitions are neighbors who I consider friends, but I have discussed with the attorneys and I do not have a conflict of interest, but I wanted to disclose in the proper, I wanted to make proper disclosure that because I live so close, I was probably more involved with neighbors than I would normally be. And I just want to make that disclosure.
Thank you, Commissioner Roberts. Next, I will open up if any members of the commission have questions for the applicant's representative here tonight. Commissioner Lewis.
In the paperwork,
If the applicant's rep, Mr. Morgan, if you'd come back up, please, thank you.
just because one of the concerns was employees. In the paperwork, it says staffing's limited to from 1 to 3 adults. Is that 1 to 3 total, or is it 1 to 3 per child?
So what should be in the paperwork is there's 1 to 3 ratio as far as a nurse to 3 children. That's what that ratio is. So
Oh,
there would
okay.
be 2 staff there if we had a full house.
2
Of
staff for 6 kids.
Anything above 4 would require, or anything above 3. So 4, 5, and 6 would require 2 staff to be on.
Thank you.
With that,
Commissioner Hatch.
just to follow up. So that 2 nurses for just the care, what about the rest of the operation of the house?
That's all that would be there on a full-time basis. Some of us may be in the home on a daily basis. So, or therapist was talked about will come in and work with these kids. So outside of the kids, there could probably sometimes be maybe 4 or 5 other staff members in the home.
Potential 10 to 12
Yeah,
at
at
any given
most.
time.
At most. Most of the time, it's just going to be the 2 and maybe 1 office staff during the day to help. So
Under the
Commissioner
C,
Roberts.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Roberts, yeah.
Under the CUP, we're requiring off-street parking only. So will there be enough parking on that property to allow for the number of people that you're anticipating to be there to take care of these patients?
yes, that was one of the purposes of buying this home because it had 2 pieces of 2 parcels, and the drive goes back in. We've specifically pulled in 2 full-size extra cab trucks with a trailer behind it and another car in, so we certainly would have enough room to keep everybody off, and that was the intent when we came into that neighborhood, was to keep it off of the street.
I've also heard concerns that there might be numerous ambulance calls and a lot of noise because of the ambulance calls. My personal observation is that when the ambulances come into our neighborhood, they have a tendency to leave their lights on, but not run their sirens. I don't know that that's a requirement. From what I understand, that's a prerogative of the driver who's driving the vehicle at the time. But from my personal experience, I've lived there for 10 years. And for the 10 years that I've been there, I have seen some ambulances come in, but I've not heard them in the neighborhood. I've seen them and seen their lights, but not heard sirens. I don't know if that's, how often would you consider or expect that you might have ambulance calls to the residents?
It's just going to be an estimated guess. Each of us could have the need for that sometime tonight. And I would welcome that if my neighbors needed it. But to answer your question, I've had 2 of the girls that will be in the home, in our home, one of them for 16 years and the other one for just about 15. In that time, we've had 1 ambulance come to our home. With the staff that's trained, that's the purpose behind it. They should be taking that child to the ER long before that would ever happen. So if an ambulance did show up, it would be there for the same reason that it was for one of you. Heaven forbid something would happen to one of them, but we don't anticipate having very many occurrences with lights and sirens down that street.
Thank you.
Commissioner Adams.
Yeah, I know you said that a lot of these children are shipped to metropolitan, metropolitan areas off the mountain. you give us an idea of which areas those might be? I mean, we talking a 3-hour drive to Phoenix, or is it further like Albuquerque, anything along those lines?
Most of the kids from here have gone down to Phoenix or Tucson, so you're talking 3 to 5 hours somewhere in that neighborhood that the families are being asked to travel to see their kids. So that's, I don't know if that answered your question, but
It did, thank you.
okay.
I've got a question. What if you could just kind of speak to what your plans are for the exterior modifications of the house? I know there's the fence requirement in the conditions, but if you guys had any other plans for what the exterior of the house is going to look like, any changes you plan to make.
At this point, we want to clean it up so that it is adding to the community. I know that the home that was purchased has been kind of an eyesore in that neighborhood for a few years. We intend for that to be the total opposite. Those who have been in the community know that we've already pulled out some of the bushes that are in front of the house, which were eyesores to us. I'm going to assume that they probably were for a few other community members. The intent is to give some touch-up paint on the outside as well to make it look better. We'll put some yard in on the side and the front through time. Obviously, it's not going to happen right when we move in, but these are the intents is to make it look like the rest of the homes in the community, the feel for the kids in there so that they feel like they're just the same as the rest of them. We have talked about if parking does become an issue, there is the possibility of putting a circular drive as well in front of the house if we need to. So that has been a discussion to keep up on what's being asked in a conditional use permit.
And just to follow up, is there going to be any type of identification of the property, like any type of signage or anything? I don't know. You figured my ignorance on what the health department requires on those types of things.
They want us to be just like the rest of them in there. We can't have signage on the vehicles. We can't have signage on the house, nor do we want to have it because that's drawing attention to something that it's not the purpose of why we're there. We're there to be just like the rest of them and offer a home environment for these kids. And so it will not stick out and nothing will tell you that it's there.
Thank you. Any other questions for applicant's representative? No, thank you, Mr. Morgan. With that, we can move into a time of public comment. And I'm sure there's a lot of you who'd like to get up and state your opinion on this particular CUP. In order to kind of keep it orderly, we are just going to have people come up one at a time. If you happen to have similar concerns and could kind of designate one person to kind of come up and voice those concerns, that way we don't have to hear necessarily the same comments on repeat. That would help this meeting be a little bit more efficient. But at the same time, I understand that you all live in the community and have a part of that, and we want there to be time for you to have your concerns heard. We will, however, just have people come up one at a time. During that time, because it's not a public hearing, because it's just a public comment portion, the commission and staff and the applicant will not be able to respond to your comments immediately after. We will wait until everyone has had a chance to speak, and then there can be a response from the commission, from staff regarding kind of the overall comments that were mentioned. So I'm sure someone wants to lead us off this evening.
I will.
Oh, yes. And when you come up, please state your name and address for the record. And if you could say it slowly, just so we catch it on the audio recording, that'll help for the minutes of the meeting.
My name is Tamara Edwards. I live at 1541 Fairway Drive. And my main concern, and I'm sure a lot of my neighbors, is just the fact that the type of children that will be in the home. We're all pretty much, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but for what it sounds like it's going to be, it doesn't sound like it'll be something that's real disruptive to the neighborhood. They're gonna have properly proper nurses and stuff that'll be caring for the children. My main concern moving here, I moved here 3 years ago. I went to an interview, was going through training for another place that's up here for, I'm not sure what I don't remember what it was with the children, like, it was a group home, and the guy that was training us was very adamant about, you know, not having any control over the kids. No, you can't reprimand them. You can't do this and that. They do things, and you have no control over it. And that's what we don't need in our personal neighborhood. It's one thing, if they're in a place, if they're going to be running wild and not, and again, for the pay, and they pretty much take anybody off the street to, to interview them for this job. That's what we don't want in our neighborhood. But if it's something for children that are, again, they're bedridden, they need, they're, the condition of the children are, they're, a lot of them are terminally ill. And that's one thing that, I don't think that we're out to oppose anything like that in our neighborhood. We just want to make sure that, at the time when these children pass, that they're not going to be bringing in other children with other problems that, will be more disruptive to the neighborhood. There is a child that, lives a few doors down who, I believe he's autistic, and the sound of sirens and things like that will set him off. And he's with a loving family that, they're taking care of him, and they don't need to have that disruption in the neighborhood either. So we want to make sure that it's going to be, properly taken care of. We're not going to be having sirens and things like that going through the neighborhood, and it's just going to be professionally run. So that's, I think, I hope I'm speaking for a lot of the people here, that we just want to make sure it's something that's going to be properly cared for. And, the home that, the people that live there, yeah, it was a disaster area. It was nice to have it sold, thinking they were fixing it up. It's going to be, a nice home now. And so it's comforting to hear from the gentleman that, it's going to be kept up. They're going to have qualified people caring for these children. And that's what I wanted to hear, that it's not just going to be, some house for, kids that, I mean, they're uncontrollable. And, that's what we just don't want to have in the neighborhood. I mean, it's nothing against the children, but you just want to make sure that you're going to have something in your neighborhood that's not going to depreciate the value of your home. And, that's one of the main concerns. It's just going to be properly run. So that's about all I have to say. That, again, it's nothing, we're not here to put down this place. We just want to make sure it's something that's going to be, not bringing down our neighborhood, the prices of our homes. And, that's about it. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Brad Fitch. I live at 1401 North 40th Drive. I share the adjacent property. I share a 165-foot property line with the house in question. So these matters are of great importance to me because they will affect me probably more so than anyone else in the neighborhood. He talked earlier about this is a community of families, and I agree. I have 150 of them right here. What about those families who have voiced their opposition to this, who have a different opinion of this? We have nothing against him. We have nothing against helping kids. We are all for helping people in need. But we feel like this is being forced on us, that we don't have a choice in the matter, that we don't get a say in the matter. And that's of concern to me. Like, the people who have signed this petition, they are good, hardworking taxpayers. They are voters. They have no animosity towards anyone. We didn't ask for this. We don't necessarily, not all of us want it. And look, I get it. You want to help people. I do too. But is this the best place to help them? This location, is it really across the street from a golf course the best place to help them? I don't think it is. It said in the application that this would have a light impact on the community. How does he know that? On what basis? What criteria? What was the litmus test by which he made that decision? Because no one came to my house and knocked on my door and asked me how this would affect my family. I've owned my house for 1.5 years. I've worked hard to own my first home. I haven't lived in my own home for 18 years. I've rented or was in school. My wife and I, to pay off all of our debt. To move into our dream home, our first home. And now this is being put on us? I didn't ask for that. But now it feels like I don't have a choice in the matter. And that's discerning to me. I have just a couple of concerns. I will take him at his word that he has only ever called the ambulance one time for his 2 children who will be living in this home, and I appreciate that. But what about the other 4? He can't speak to that. He can say he'll do his best, and he can use a straw man argument like any of us could drop dead at a moment and we would need an ambulance. Well, the people who will be living there have health issues, so their risk is greater than the normal person's. And my problem is not what will this property look like 5 months from now, but 2 years from now, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now. Nothing gets better with time. Things get worse over time if they're not properly maintained. And it's a very sympathetic cause. I get it. I truly do. Like, I am a teacher, all right? I've taught children for over 12 years. But most of the people who are for this, they don't live there. They don't have to live beside this. I do. And 150 other people who live in that neighborhood are against it as well. And I have asked Mr. I've asked Mr. Morgan on 2 occasions at these public meetings, can he promise that it will only ever be invalid children, children who are bedridden, children who have conditions, like the way he is proposing now? It will be like that 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And he said he couldn't, and I appreciate his honesty. I understand why he can't say that, because you don't know what the future will be. The conditional use permit, the DD license, allows for a wide range of physical or mental health issues, 0 to 18, 1 to 18. So yes, while he's focused on a certain thing now, will it always be that way? Those are the concerns that I have, in addition to all the other things that I'm not going to repeat because they've been said a million times already. But I will leave you with those thoughts. Please do not so easily dismiss the thoughts and desires of 150 people for a few. Do not dismiss the majority for the minority. When the 2 actual owners of this property on the paperwork, I understand he'll facilitate it. I understand that. But the 2 people who actually our name is on the deed, they don't even live in our town. You have 150 people here who do live in our town. So I would leave you to think about that, and I thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Maureen Owens. My address is 1301 North 41st Drive. I had dreamed for a year of moving into the neighborhood for its pristine deciduous wooded homescapes, and peaceful country living. Once I moved in, I had never been so shocked to find what outstandingly friendly and caring neighbors I would have. I came here tonight to share what I know of group home impact to a quiet street residence in a high-income neighborhood. I have adopted special needs children who came from a group home. Some of the comings and goings into and out of a group home will be from medical professionals, psychological professionals, police officers, parole officers, foundations, mentors, lawyers, court-appointed CASAs, family, parents, employees of the group home, family members of the employees, vendors, and other special interest people relevant to the needs of the group home, as well as DCS and the client's team members if they are wards of the state. Due to funds being limited to the running of this home, the landscaping and maintenance may be neglected. There will be a large white cargo van coming and going for transporting the clients who live in the home, as well as other transportation vehicles. There may be a loud alarm system on the doors and windows in case clients run away. Children who've been arrested may reside at the home and be on probation or rearrested during their time there. Personally, I'd be dismayed at this home being next to my home because of my expectations, privacy on my street, and a huge amount of money I invested in remodeling. In other words, I care about my home very much. A group home provides only income for someone's personal business, although it may seem noble. I can't help but wonder, what is this group home business doing in my particular neighborhood? Wouldn't it be better placed in a low-income neighborhood, rural setting, or business district? Country Club Manor is an HOA-free golf course community. Most residents I've met are retired and expect a peaceful lifestyle being there. It's the last home they'll purchase. Everyone keeps their properties immaculately manicured. The residents are out walking the streets continuously for pleasure. The neighborhood is highly coveted and properties sell quickly. There are no privacy gates, really. There's no crime. This purchase seems to me to be all about location, location, location for the homeowner of the group home. To make a buck in a great place and not care one inkling about the residents and the lifestyles of everyone community-wide is quite confounding. What will be the backgrounds of the special needs clients? Are they violent? Are they sexualized? What kinds of problems will be in our community due to this group home? Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening to me. My name is Suzanne Fern, SUZANNE FERN. I live at 1521 North 36th Drive, a few doors down from Mr. Roberts. I'm one of the neighbors he mentioned. I have a few different questions to ask. I have personal experience because of my elderly, now deceased father with 3 different residential businesses, residential facilities. Okay, so the first one was independent living. The second one was assisted living. The third one was Solterra. The first 2 were in the Mesa area. The third one was Solterra. The turnover of the staff is so quick. It just goes, in all 3 places, the staff turns over very quickly. It's not just maybe a professional nurse that's there, but also someone has to plan meals, buy groceries, cook meals, clean the house. Sure, there's a lot of laundry. Well, those people, there's going to have staff to do that, and they're going to come and go. At Solterra, my father was in a memory unit. That unit was supposed to have 3 employees, 24 hours a day. He lived and died there within a 10-day period. While he was there, my sister and I were there 24 hours a day. I had the 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. shift. She had the 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. shift. We were promised by the director that there would be 3 professionals in his ward at all times. These people are not locked up. They can wander around all night. There was only 1 person there. I went down and talked to the director, and she said it's impossible to keep people. She said, I was told that it was almost impossible to attract, train, and employ caregivers. What will you do? What will this company do to retain employees? Will you pay them a living wage? How about benefits? Will they be hiring employees or contractors? There's a big difference. During the Reagan administration, a Social Security identity program for potential documented workers was put in place. It's called E-Verify. Are you all familiar with this program, E-Verify? It makes sure that the person who's going to work for you is either a United States citizen or they have an official Social Security number, that they are a legal resident of our country. For example, at the assisted living home in Mesa, all the caregivers were from Somalia. Right now, there's a nationwide concern about undocumented immigrants and workers entering our country. If this company is hiring employees, would they agree at all for every employee to use the E-Verify system? I also have personal experience with a business. I was their accountant that did not use it. It was a manufacturing concern that made things out of leather and vinyl, like handbags and menu covers. They were raided one day by the INS. The INS went around the building, covered all the doors. The employees frantically tried to hide under piles of fabric and leather, but they were all captured and taken out. Some of them were from Mexico. The majority of them were from Asia. They were undocumented. Yes, they brought in Social Security numbers. Yes, they brought in papers. They were all fake. The employer is not held responsible for this. This law is not enforced, the E-Verify. That's just your choice. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the constant turnover of people, what kind of people they might be. Have they really been vetted to have a Social Security number and be a documented worker? No matter where they're from, are they documented? Or is it just anybody, like the lady said, just anybody that comes in that'll do it? Are they going to hire contractors? Or are they going to hire employees? Employees have more of a commitment to their job than contractors. So I'd like to hear that they're going to hire employees that will feel connected to them and feel a responsibility to them. Will they pay decent wages so they can retain these people and not like Solterra say, we're going to pay them as little as we can, and that's why we can't keep them. That's all about that. One other issue is that currently, I'm sure you guys know all this, there's a big problem with the P&Z in Pinetop Lakeside about a proposed guest ranch. The issue there was on the front page of the Independent. The issue there is a conflict of interest between the investors and apparently one of the P&Z members. I'm not an expert on this, but that's what it's about. Are there any potential conflicts of interest between the members of the Show Low P&Z and the owners or members of the LLC? Has that been vetted? That's all I have to say. If any of you want to ask me a question, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'll do it slowly for you. My name is Jeff McNeil. I'm at 1400 Fairway Drive, just north of the property in question. I just want to start by saying I'm happy to live in a country where we are allowed to express our opinions and be heard. However, today I'm disappointed that we now live in a country that we can no longer have a differing opinion without being labeled as something we are not. It's disappointing that some of my great neighbors have been told such in the past several weeks when talking about this business going in. I'll try and be very short. I'm not against handicapped children living in my neighborhood. Let me make that clear. I'm against a business being allowed in my neighborhood and nothing more. Make no mistake, this project in front of you is a business for profit. If it were not, folks would not have spent more than $500,000 on this house. Put it in place if they knew they weren't going to get their money back. I do want to say that the Morgans are a great family, and I appreciate what they're trying to do. I know they make a lot of money, foster parents, from the government to be able to take care of these children. And that's how this is all going to be paid for. I might reiterate some of the statements that were made tonight, but these are my concerns. Traffic, as has already been stated, I don't want to waste anybody's time. It is going to increase traffic. There is no doubt that traffic will be increased with employees coming and going. My other concern is that driveway currently is a single driveway. Yes, it's long and it opens up to a garage, but it's a single car driveway. My other concern is the application said mostly bedridden children. As Mr. Morgan said, there can be autistic children in there. In my line of work, autistic children go missing, and it brings in a lot of fire and police to start looking for these children. The other concern with autistic children, they're naturally drawn to water, and there are several water places right around in that neighborhood. So that was one of my questions and concern. What does mostly mean? And I think Mr. Morgan kind of answered that with the other type of children to fill that house can be made. Bedridden children are not a problem. I get that. But the ones who are walking, functioning, they are escape risk, and they'll end up in our neighborhood. I'll also touch on the decrease of my home value. The opposition will say it is not, that it won't decrease our home values. Speculation on both sides, I get that. No one can say for sure. However, one of our neighbors was told that someone who bought 2 houses down in the last month said that they knew if this home was coming in, they wouldn't have purchased there. Again, this is a neighborhood, as already stated. Families walk their children morning, afternoon, and evenings. And it is a beautiful neighborhood to walk in. And I want it to stay that way. I lost $8,000 on my house I sold where I raised my kids due to my neighbor's junk pile in the backyard that city code enforcement refused to do anything about, even though it's in their city codes. I was told to put up a bigger privacy fence. I was told I had to spend more money just to sell my house. Could have sold my house 3 or 4 times over had my neighbor had a yard that was maintained and didn't have junk that was unused. My yards have always been maintained and immaculate. The other concerns are basically have already been stated, so I didn't want to do that. But in the end, it is a business, make no mistake about it. Money will be made off this venture. I believe it is their intent to give them a nice home and honest in nature, but it's still about money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ashley Fitch. I live at 1401 North 40th Drive. I am the neighbor directly behind this proposed house. I share a 165-foot property fence with this house in my backyard. Now, I understand that the current zoning proposal would call for a 6-foot privacy fence around the north, south, and west sides of the property. However, fences do not stop loud noises, flashing lights, and sirens of first responders. Looking at the city blueprints of this block is one thing, but I have real pictures here showing you how close the proposed house is to all of its property line. I'm gonna give you pictures. You can go ahead. First, from our own back porch to the property fence is only 35 feet. The side of the proposed house to its southern neighbor's fence is 47 feet. And it is 36 feet from its northern neighbor's fence. Likewise, the back of this proposed house is only 8 feet from its own property fence. Regardless, privacy fences or not, this property is so close to its neighbors. I think loud noises and lack of large space and any possible parking issues that could result would be a problem for everyone nearby, including the people who are living or working on this site. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Debbie Stoffel. I'm at 3571 West Fairway Court. I'm a new resident to Sholo. So I don't know all my neighbors, but I'm sure I would like them. I'd like to thank you for your service to Sholo. And I only have a short amount of time, so I'll start with my conclusion. I'm asking that the Planning and Zoning Commission decline the conditional use permit based on the fact that our property rights will be violated. I surmise that your decision was based on the Fair Housing Act. I referenced tonight's agenda, page 5, item number 12. The local land use laws and practices and the application of the Fair Housing Act issued by the DOJ and HUD, dated November 10th, 2016, states when acting or applying zoning or land use laws, state and local government may not act because of fears, prejudices, stereotypes, unsubstantiated assumptions that the community members may have about current or prospective residents because of the residents' protected characteristics. Doing so violates the act. Even if the officials themselves do not personally share such bias, and I believe nobody here does. Additionally, a local government may not block a group home or deny requested reasonable accommodation in response to a neighbor's stereotypical fears or prejudices about a person with disabilities or a particular type of disability. It is the staff's opinion that this submittal falls under the protection of the Federal Fair Housing Act. Just like that. It's their opinion. You know what the Department of Justice did not list? Property right. The only legal defense that property owners have. You can turn this conditional use permit down based on property right. The federal unelected bureaucrats are so good at fooling us with their bully tactics. The DOJ and HUD are violating the Bill of Rights and Article 10 of the Constitution as well. That's my opinion. It would be our founding fathers' opinion as well. The committee has had a lot of input from neighbors. Your staff left the last sentence off the quote from the DOJ and HUD. Here it is. Of course, a city council or zoning board is not bound by everything that is said by every person who speaks at a public hearing. It is the record as a whole that will be determinative. We can throw out all of the concerns from property owners that exhibit fears, prejudices, stereotypes, unsubstantiated assumptions, and what is left standing are the ones who are concerned about their property rights and the safety of those children. That is determinative. That is legal. What is the purpose of the Planning and Zoning Commission? Why do we have conditional use permit? I would propose that one of the reasons that we have this department is to maintain the property value of the property owners in Show Low. When would your committee deny a conditional use permit for a group home? If not now, when? What conditions? According to the Arizona State Health Department, there are already 11 group homes in Show Low. Have there been any problems, complaints, insights? You're asking us to accept a business in our quiet, enjoyable neighborhood that could have 24-hour activity. This business will have no local licensing, regulation, or oversight. Again, I respectfully ask that you take my analysis into consideration and turn down the conditional use permit. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you.
My name is Daniel Brewer. I live at 965 Old Highway. Although I don't live in the community in question, I do live in Show Low, and I'm a pediatric doctor here in the community. So I would like to speak to the need for a home like this in our community. As a pediatric doctor, I take care of a large number of disabled kids that live in our community, as well as take care of healthy kids of disabled kids that live outside of our community, because there's not a place like this for kids in our community. Many of the kids that I know of that would benefit from a place like this live in Los Niños or a long-term residential hospital down in the valley. Their parents do not have much opportunity to see them. Everyone knows what the gas prices are like. Everyone knows how hard it is to travel down to the valley. Imagine not being able to see your kid. So there is a need. I know many kids, many families that would benefit from local families that would benefit from that. As well as I would like to address what kind of kids require 24/7 nursing care. Because I'm one of the people that helps to determine if a kid meets 24/7 nursing care. A kid with autism will typically not meet that criteria. They may need 24-hour supervision, but not nursing care. There's a difference between a child that needs 24/7 specialized nursing care and a kid that needs 24 hours supervision. Any kid in a foster home, in a residential home, requires 24-hour care. Kids that would require 24-hour nursing supervision would be kids that are medically dependent, kids that have feeding tubes, trachs, ventilators, some kind of medical dependency to be able to qualify. They would be kids that have severe disabilities, immobility, and cannot complete any ADLs or activity of daily life. That means they can't bathe themselves, they can't shower, they can't do things they can't feed themselves. Most of these kids are going to be fed by feeding tubes. And so I know they brought up cooking, cleaning. That's probably not going to be an issue for a kid that needs 24-hour nursing care. And then I would also just ask at the end, when you guys are allowed to comment, if Morgan Brown could comment on the legality that has been brought up. In my personal opinion, saying that there's going to be a lot of ambulances is discriminating against kids in their medical condition. The only reason you're saying there's going to be more ambulances is because these kids have medical conditions. And to me, that's a discriminatory statement. And I would like if they could comment on the legality of such statements. But as a pediatrician, as a doctor in this community, I do feel that there is a need for a home like this. I do feel like it will be a blessing to our community. And I feel like we're a community that should be one that would open and embrace kids with disabilities. And I hope we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
First of all, I apologize for having to go in and out so much. I'm a cancer patient under 5 years treatment so far, so I have to go out now and then. I'm the lucky individual that lives directly across the street from the proposed house. My name is Robert Draper, and my wife and I own the home at 1341 North Fairway Drive. This is directly across the street and in front of the driveway for 1400 North Fairway Drive. I am a retired Phoenix Police Supervisor, and my wife is a retired pediatric intensive care nurse with 45 years of experience. We both have also spent countless hours volunteering with children of all ages and abilities. I tell you this so you know our opinions come from years of experience and not knee-jerk reactions to this proposal. This is a predominantly senior golfing community with few children of various ages, lots of grandchildren, and the usual 1 or 2 dogs per household. The roadway is frequently used for walking and socializing. It's barely 2 lanes wide, and as a police officer, I know widths of roadways well and what it takes to have proper passage for people and vehicles. It is designed as a small feeder street for the single-family home community, which we are. This provides an amazing, tranquil surrounding for neighbors as the city designed it to be. I tell you all of this as I strongly feel the proposal would endanger not only the neighborhood safety, but its tranquility. I know safety is one of the issues this permit can be denied under. Safety to the community and the residential residents within it. I have appeared before these in Phoenix on numerous occasions, in favor of some, opposed to some. The narrow roadway would see a significant increase in non-resident traffic that it was never meant to handle. These kind of facilities generate traffic from large emergency vehicles and other, these kind of facilities generate traffic from large emergency vehicles, vans for transport, for medical care, and other activities, supplies, friends, family, and various agencies. The indication that there would be 1 or 2 visits a day from someone is simply not true. As a police officer, I was called to these facilities on numerous occasions. Generally, it was because of traffic and noise. Even in the severely handicapped facilities needing 24-hour care, the children often become very frustrated and create sounds and banging walls and other things that do affect the neighbors. Another problem that's been expressed here already, and I have to agree wholeheartedly, having been to so many of them, and my wife having had 45 years experience at these kind of children. And we brought a lot of them into our home, and we went to the homes of a lot of them. They had caring families. She watched them from infancy clear up. Some of them made it into their early teens, early 20s. And yes, they deserve a home, and I have proud legacy for wanting to place such a home into this community. But they needed to study the significant impacts upon our community before they decided on this location. The roadway is still my biggest concern. If you're walking down the roadway and 2 cars try to pass in opposite directions, you often have to step off into a rock watershed in front of all the properties that provides drainage down the roadway. And those are large rocks, and these are elderly people like myself. Yeah, I'm old, I admit it. But otherwise, the 2 vehicles can't pass. My mailbox has been knocked down 3 times. 3 times in 2 years. One of them by a mail truck trying to pass a vehicle. Others were just cars passing each other. Or one of them, in fact, where it just got leaned over, was backing out of a driveway. The road is too narrow. They often have to go forward and back. Again, remember, we're talking senior neighborhood, not young kids, senior neighborhood. Emergency and many other vehicles have to park on the roadway. Some people have said, oh, well, they can park off into the driveway of this home. I'm sure your policies here are the same as the policies in Phoenix. They're prohibited from pulling the emergency vehicles into private residential because of the liability issues involved in that. And then you compound that by trying to back a fire truck out, and usually it's two responding, out back into the roadway. You either wind up in the ditch on my side of the roadway, which has all those nice large boulders for drainage, or you wind up knocking down mailboxes or utilities that are strategically placed right out at the edge of the roadway in Childo. All of this adds up to serious safety issues for vehicles, walkers, and those loved best friends' dogs. Briefly, I wish to address another concern, noise. Having lived with family next to a serious special needs facility, I have learned that they express their frustrations in various extremely loud manners, all hours of day and night. These children often don't sleep, especially don't sleep at night. It's like when you're sick, you feel worse in the evening. It's just a fact of life. I've also responded as a supervisor to many of these facilities where a child has wandered away. Yes, they say the majority, and I'm just quoting what the first speaker said, the majority are children that are unable to walk. Well, it only takes one minority to step out that door with one or two healthcare providers and go onto that golf course, which has ponds and golf balls flying everywhere. And once they fall into one of those ponds, they would not be recovered or found without massive manpower and at the tragedy of a loss of life. The same thing if they got out into the roadway. As I say, it's too narrow. When an emergency vehicle or a van, and those caravans aren't going to all park in the driveway, believe me, I told you, I lived with family right next to one. They park everywhere. Mostly it seems in front of all the neighbors' driveways, as do the families that come. That necessitates us trying to go and find the owner to move it. That necessitates us to wind narrowly past the vehicle because it's on too narrow of a roadway for this facility to exist. It also puts the lives of the elderly in danger. We don't hear the cars coming behind us. We don't hear the cars when they're having to maneuver around an emergency vehicle that's parked there, or simply a family member that's parked on this narrow roadway. We just don't hear it. You're putting our lives at risk if you permit this to happen, because someone's going to get ran over, and there's going to be horrendous lawsuits over it all with Legacy, the city, whatever. But I don't want to see those kind of things happen. I don't want to see anybody's life lost. It's a senior community. It's a narrow roadway. It's safety to the residents of that community that we are here fighting for. It's not against Legacy. I applaud Legacy for wanting to put a home in this community, in this Sholo area. They're very essential. I believe in them in the utmost. But I also believe in the fact they should be placed not in low income. You haven't heard me mention a word over, I have over $500,000 in my home, over $200,000 in improvements in the last 2 years since I've been here. I'm not complaining about that. I'm complaining about the fact it's not near medical facilities. It's not near the kind of things these children need. And I believe it should have been placed where the best needs of the children are provided. And that's by medical facilities in neighborhoods. I don't have a problem with that, but neighborhoods that have ingress and egress without endangering other people's lives. I have a lot more topics I could talk about pertaining to this, but my main issue, from my experience and my years of service on the police department and my wife's years with pediatrics, it's just not a suitable location in the best interest of these children. And I also will refer to one other thing. I believe it was Mr. Morgan was the man that spoke first. I think I have his name right with cancer. I sometimes don't get these straight. But he said there would be one person there with 3 children. If these are that severely needed, in need special children, while she's servicing one, another can wander out the door. We were originally told there would be 2 nurses at all times, no less than 2 nurses. Now I'm hearing 1 person, and you didn't hear the word specialized nurse in that, as the pediatrician referred to. You didn't hear special nurse. You didn't hear nurses with special training. You heard 1 person for 3 patients. You heard 2 people if it gets 4 or above. It's not adequate care. It's not. I've been in too many of these homes. I've seen too many of these children wander off, and I've had to organize 20, 30 troops to come and try to find where they got to. They don't communicate, they hide. It's dangerous with those ponds. It's dangerous with that roadway. Another thing, I have to agree with another lady that spoke up here. It is practically impossible to get adequate staffing for these facilities anymore, let alone train staffing. Heaven forbid you could find nurses that would provide and work at these facilities. The burnout is incredible. The stay is short, and the hiring new ones is just random. Anybody that walks in the door, so I can train them in 5 minutes and have somebody to babysit these kids. These kids don't deserve that. And I do not feel that they're offering proper care for them at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me address you with one more comment. Again, my name is Suzanne Fern. At the last meeting that was held in, when the P&Z meeting was canceled, it was held in the lobby, and I sat on a bench next to the 2 gentlemen, Mr. Morgan and his partner. And near the end of the meeting, we were just chatting, and I don't remember which one it was, told me that he couldn't guarantee that another home like that wouldn't be put in our neighborhood. If this one was allowed to be, if the P&Z allows them to move into our neighborhood, he couldn't guarantee that another one wouldn't be in our neighborhood. And I think the second one is always easier than the first one. So also I have to say that I think that the pediatric physician and the wife of the police officer, I think that kind of work is not just a job, it's a calling. And so I really admire people who do this kind of work, but I agree with everyone who says, and I don't want to say NIMBY, like not in my backyard, but I really don't think it's a suitable neighborhood. I really don't. So I have nothing against these children. I have all the sympathy in the world, but I just don't think it's a suitable neighborhood. And as you can see, there's 150 people in that small area. So thank you.
Thank you.
Beverly Brewer, 965 Old Highway 160. We are obviously not living on this street. My husband spoke to the need of a facility like this. I can speak by experience of a family member who needed a facility like this for my sister. She was in one for 15 years before she passed. That was her home. We couldn't take care of her. It was devastating when we had to put her in a home like that. As this last woman said, it's a calling. It truly is. And the nurses that they hire, they don't take on these jobs if they don't feel like they can. These complex care kids are a whole different ballgame than someone with a cold at the hospital. We have one of our own. He required 24/7 nursing care. He was on a ventilator for 2.5 years in our home. He is autistic and has behavior issues now. And gosh, it's a good thing that some of the neighbors we've had didn't know about his disabilities before we moved in, or else we would have never been allowed there. Because sometimes he gets mad. And, you know, these kids they have so many needs, they're not going to run out the door. They can't wheel their wheelchair out that fast. I'd be willing to bet a lot of people have noisy door alarms, also known as children or dogs or any other number of things that make noise when you open the door. I also know that on that street there are families, there are a lot of kids. It's not just the senior community. I know there's a lot of seniors there, but my 13-year-old walks up and down the road with her friends in that neighborhood all the time. So I don't know. Like I said, I think, yes, there's maybe a few more cars, not as many as they're thinking. The risk of an ambulance may be higher. Yeah, but like I said, it would be, I mean, you just don't know who's going to move in next door. And the state puts regulations on all of these things that a lot of people don't know about, don't recognize. They have no idea how much paperwork, certifications, everything that not just the owners have to have, but every single person who walks in that door, providers or therapists or anything. The state has to know who they are before they hire them and they can work in the home with these kids. They regulate everything that goes on in that home. Otherwise, it would be a lot easier to do it. And they're not cash cows, which was a phrase that was also been used. The resources that it takes to help these kids give them really what they need are far more than what the state can ever write a check for. That's just not how it is. So, like I said, we've lived in multiple areas at different time in our son's development. And majority of the places we have lived, when we weren't sitting in a hospital or going through another surgery, he's had over a dozen, our community was excited to see us at church, alarms and all. We took him ventilator, machines, everything. Everywhere we went, soccer games and Walmart. And I mean, like I said, church, alarms going off in the middle of sacrament. People were just excited to see us there. So anyway, like I said, these kids aren't a nuisance. If they get upset and hit their head on a wall or something, I wouldn't say that's anything worse than a teenager yelling at their parent. So anyway, I hope that maybe just gives people a little bit more of a different perspective on things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tammy Rothermel, Rothermel. I live at 1500 Fairway Drive, 3 doors down from 1400, the address we're speaking about tonight. I am opposed to a commercial business being installed in our intensely residential neighborhood. For my husband and me, our objection is about mixing a commercial business with a residential area. Our prime concern in this matter is for the children's welfare who will be housed at that facility. We recognize the need for such a facility in this community. One of our points is we're just saying not in this neighborhood because of the our neighborhood is almost completely retired people. We have possibly 3 families on our entire street that have children, and there is one that is about 13 years old, and the other 2 are seniors in high school. We collected over 150 signatures this week, or within a few days, about the conditional use permit at 1400 Fairway. Since this campaign began, it's been made very clear to me. I'd like to go somewhere else. One of my main concerns is, and the concerns of the people who have signed these petitions, is that this might not always be a home for the severely handicapped children. That at some point they may change. They may take in children that are less handicapped, that would possibly not need to be, that could escape, that could run down the road and find the ponds on the golf course. And the one pond that I'm thinking of, there is no forgiveness in this pond. There is no beach. There is no gradual entry. There's golf course and there's water. And if you have a severely autistic child, that would be the end of them. There would be no escape from these ponds. One of our concerns is the lack of supervision. Sholo can't, I mean, it's a city that has a lot of facets to it. It can't police this home, make sure things are going the way they're supposed to be going, that the proper care is given. At one of the meetings, Mr. Morgan met with the residents in our neighborhood in the driveway of the address. And he stated that he was applying for his license with the Department of Developmental Disability, DDD. The Department of Developmental Disability has very tight rules and regulations and standards and practices. Failure to adhere to their rules and regulations would result in the person who is licensed losing their license. I would very much like to see if this permit is granted, that it be contingent upon Mr. Morgan having his DDD license, and that the permit that you issue not only be a temporary permit right now, and that upon his completion of getting that license, then the full CPU would be issued. CUP would be issued. I also would like to say that I am not prejudiced against children with disabilities. I understand they need a place up here. We're just asking, can't it be a different place? My next door neighbor has a severely autistic child. she has a fear, a very legitimate fear, that against the sirens most of all, because she knows that if a siren comes down our street, she's going to have to be calling an ambulance to take her child to the hospital because he won't be able to handle it. And he lives 2 doors down from the property we're talking about. That's mainly the reason my husband and I got involved in this, is because we are concerned about her child. Also, the flashing lights. Right now, they're not a problem, but it has been explained to her that as her child reaches puberty, which is 2 years away, give or take, that this could be a definite problem and could trigger severe reaction from her child. So I ask tonight that if you do decide to grant this license, that, or this permit, that you please require Mr. Morgan to be licensed by the DDD, which will give the community peace of mind in the fact that it will have oversight over what goes on in this home. And there will be some recourse for the children there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, my name is Brad Fitch. I just want to bring up one kind of question that kind of came to me as I was listening to everyone talk tonight. 2 parts, really. One, as the previous speaker said, that the training required to be a professional in this place is highly specialized. It's maintained by the state. It's not just going to be Joe Schmo walking off the street, and that's awesome, great. We should all have highly trained, qualified people running these things. Absolutely, yes and amen. With that said, like so many people have said, it's a calling, it's a burnout, it's a turnover. There are issues. So if the training is so specialized, are they sure that they're going to have enough people? I mean, right now, Summit can't even get enough nurses. So how's this place going to get the help they need? So just something to think about. The other question I have, it seems to me that there are 2 big concerns tonight. One, we want a place for the kids to be healthy and to be taken care of. And 2, all of the concerns that I'm not going to repeat that have been listed by the neighbors and by the 150 people on the petition. And I guess maybe this question is more directed toward Mr. Morgan and Mr. Hasley. Perhaps we can discuss afterwards if they wish. Could we come to some kind of mutual arrangement? Could we make a conversation, make a deal that's amicable to all sides? Could we negotiate maybe moving this place to a place that would benefit the kids and the community? So we can talk about that maybe later, but thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is John Hefner, and I live at 1401 Fairway Drive, directly across from the property in question. And I just want to touch again, not to beat a dead dog, but there is no way with a linear driveway and no sidewalk that they can possibly handle the volume of traffic that this business enterprise is going to require. You're going to have it's a linear driveway, like I say. If you have 2 cars parked in there, nobody else can park behind it without, and without the 2 front cars getting out. There's no access, no egress. So it's going to require a circular driveway, which is going to take up the whole front yard, which, I mean, if it's, the idea is to not ruin the residential footprint, you're going to have as many parking slots as a dollar store. And like I say, I don't think any of us are against the facility. I think it's needed, but just not at this property. It just won't handle it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Carolyn Walker. I'm the neighbor to the south of the property. You probably recognize my name because I put a 5-page letter, which I gave to Mr. Tagauskas. He was nice enough to take it in, and it should be in your packet. In that letter, I addressed a number of concerns the other folks have. Won't repeat them. However, I'm very concerned about these children. I want you to understand that the lady that everybody keeps talking about, or the family that everybody keeps talking about, down the street from us with the autistic young man, I was the first in the neighborhood to greet them into our neighborhood. I was the first to befriend them. I have maintained a friendly relationship with them. Let me tell you what happened. When Mr. Morgan and several other people were having an impromptu meeting in the driveway of the subject home, she pulled up and I turned around and looked at her, and she came out of her truck and screamed at me and called me names and told me never to look at her again. That is what this permit is doing to our neighborhood. The very next day, she knocked at my door crying, saying, I am so sorry that this has got me so upset. I'm so worried about my son, my family, and my neighbors. We're a very close-knit neighborhood. This is tearing it apart. We can get past all of that, but the concerns that you're not hearing from the neighbors, which I'm hearing, I'm directly south of this home. It will affect me as much as Brad and Jeff. I'm not complaining about the type of home it is, but I need to have some assurances from this city. I'm seeing a general plan that's being completely disregarded. I am seeing an application with 2 names on it, and then I'm introduced to another gentleman who's apparently running it. I don't know if this is a nursing home, a group home. I don't know what it is. I'd like to know. I'd love to be greatly informed. I welcome good neighbors. Trust me, I lived with the previous neighbor. That was no kettle of fish. So just about anything would be an improvement. So that's not my concern. I want to know who's coming, who's staying, who's coming and going. Are they licensed? Are they bonded? Are they insured? What's going on next door? I think those are reasonable questions for me to ask. I asked him of my crazy drug-ridden neighbor when he was there. So I think those are just really realistic questions to ask. The second thing is, what happens if things go wrong? What happens if my neighbor, God forbid, with her autistic son, whose bedroom is right on the street, sees those lights and just goes berserk? And this happens a couple of times. What is their recourse? Are you going to put conditions of approval in this CUP? Do you have any intention of addressing any of these concerns? The other thing is, this house was built pre-1978. I feel like I don't want anybody tearing that place apart until it's been officially tested for lead. I do not want disabled children going to a home with the possibility of lead or any other hazardous material. And I live next door. I know what was done to that house. I know that it wasn't tested for lead. I think that's a #1 priority. I don't want disabled children being exposed. Now, I didn't really want to get into this, but I have some very severe medical conditions, one of which I don't even know if you understand what this is, but I have severe fibromyalgia and sleep apnea, which means that
Yes, the lights and the sirens will wake me up. But the change of shifts, cars driving by in the middle of the night or at odd hours is going to wake me up. The problem with that is once I'm up, I'm up. So I will now be getting no sleep. Probably not a concern to anyone. It's definitely a concern to me, but I do need to put that on the record so that you know that that will affect me in a very severe way. One more concern I have is that we're talking about minor improvements on that home. Disabled children. I am thinking they're probably not going to walk. They're probably going to need wheelchair access. There's no way they can get in the front door of that home without a ramp. And what happens in the snow? Is there going to be covering so that these children are not exposed to the snow, which obviously we get up here. So I am trying to be a good neighbor, but I'd really like to know what's going on. I mean, everybody else has had meetings and talked to people, but not me. I tried to be in the driveway, but my neighbor yelled at me. So that's all straightened out. We're good friends again. But I think the problem with the way that this came up was the fact that, and I know Mr. Morgan mentioned that he did want to have a meeting with the neighbor. And I'm sorry, but I think he should have done that. I think he was right to think that. Because I think most of the concerns people have would have been overcome, taken care of, or understood if he would have just been allowed to come and have a little meeting and get what people's concerns were. Was not allowed to do that. I'm sorry he didn't. I think this is kind of a tragedy on this part, but unfortunately, the way this is being handled now, I'm in opposition to this, not because of the type of home it is, but because of the way it is being handled. There are no conditions of being applied to the CUP. I think that a commercial venture, and I'm not even really so sure that it's a commercial venture. It is they are getting money. But these children, I don't see anywhere where they can have recreation. This is a very small yard. They're going to have to take out long-standing palm trees, put in parking. There's no place for them to play. There's no nearby medical facility. They're stuck in a yard. And if they're bedridden, they're in a room. I mean, not even a garden or something outside to give them some life or a spinning wheel or something. I think they need some stimulation, some room, some entertainment, not a golf course that they might get hurt on, might even die. I mean, we just don't want that for these children. So I just wanted to say that to the commission. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. One thing, could you verify, are you at 1340 North Fairway Drive?
Yes, sir, I am. I apologize for not giving that to you.
No worries, just wanted to make sure. Anyone else? All right, with that, I will close the public comment. Oh, we have one more. I apologize.
We're huggers.
Yeah. My name's Jennifer Day. I live at 1441 North Fairway Drive. This is why I didn't come down. I don't want to evoke the ire of my neighbors that I love very, very dearly. All of you, especially my immediate neighbors, and Carolyn and I. It was a miscommunication. She looked at me and I was already, you know what? That's not what this is about. I wanted to say that I'm incredibly touched by the outpouring of love, and I watched cowardly from Facebook until I heard our family being brought up a few times, and I thought, when I heard Evelyn being brave enough to expose herself as a special needs mom, that I had no right to sit back and hide in my house. And I wanted to say that I understand my neighbors' fears, and I appreciate very much that they're thinking of my son and how it would impact him. I do want to say that I believe that we're more of a risk of being a problem in the neighborhood because of the amount of ambulance calls we've had to have for Charlton, and that I do believe that to address some of the issues I'll share personal information medically about him, that we've started neurofeedback. We had our second session today, and Dr. Lisbon has assured me we have enough time that she's cured epilepsy. So I don't think that flashing lights are going to be a problem, because I think that we won't have to face that. He is in Perseus starting Friday, so he will be getting intense ABA therapy that then has an academics rolled in. So I'm not going to worry as much soon about the elopement issue, and that if the increased traffic and such. I've also, as far as the aesthetics, I've loaned out Graham, our 13-year-old neurotypical son, willingly to mow their lawn so that it doesn't become an eyesore. I don't want my property value to be affected. I don't want this to be an issue. So we're going to do things to make sure that it's not an issue. I volunteered to help them paint the house, and I still want them to know that I would love to do that. I think that it does look run down, and that it would look fantastic, and our values could go up if we threw on something on that hun poop brown color that I desperately want gone. And I think everybody else, I don't know what to say to address the other aspects of a group home, because my son has only ever needed an emergency behavioral group home. And I'm going to share something that I haven't shared with anyone, is that he was in a group home in Peoria. The group home that Dennis had, he was the owner. The group home he had a wonderful swimming pool in the back, and it was in from the freeway, the 101. It was tucked in, much more quiet. He ended up buying a home that was just off the 101 and off of the major thoroughfare. So there was a lot of traffic noise. The reason he had to do that was because a neighbor set fire. A neighbor set fire. Because he didn't want them there, because they made noise. And I know that this street isn't like that. I've seen too many people who are very compassionate and loving. And I think that we could possibly find a way to look at all the ways that we could support it, instead of finding all the ways that we can't support it. I've taken the first step of offering my son to mow the lawn. I'm willing to do physical work to help improve the house. We do have a lot of seniors that are grandparents, and I would hope if my son ever escaped the house, which he could, that they would be the first ones that would phone the police saying, I see one of our at-risk children running loose, and I don't think the parents know that they're out, and we could do this. But I do believe that we are going to have medically fragile as promised, because I've seen people bull crap me. And the Morgans were not lying when they talked about the way they love their children and the type of children they're going to help. I know that Charlton is definitely a 24 supervision, and it is a totally different group home than a 24-hour medical need. But I want to thank everybody again for everything that they have done for us. And I'm not dismissive of anyone's fears. I did listen to some of it, and I don't want to see any safety things happen, but we could support them. Because if we don't let them in to our neighborhood, which is safe and crime free, and we make them go somewhere else, because it's always somewhere else, somewhere that's more appropriate, the more appropriate neighborhood be more apt to get rid of the problem by lighting fire to the house. And nobody thinks of that we need people who are reasonable and are educated and are good problem solvers. I'm sure that there's a lot of brains in this room, and I've run out of things to say, so thanks. And I was his ex parte. I came saying I was concerned, I don't want you to, and then I came back and said I've talked to them, I found out, and now I don't have a problem. So there you go.
Thank you for sharing. And seeing no one else, I will close the public comment portion of this agenda item, and I will bring it back to Mr. Traskis and Mr. Brown for, if you guys want to make any responses to any of the things that were said.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So I did take notes as comments were being made. I got about 5 pages of them. I'm just going to go through and kind of summarize. I didn't write down, obviously, all of the comments. That's why we take minutes and have this meeting recorded. I tried to focus on things that were more of questions versus statements, so that we could be able to answer those questions. A lot of these questions, I believe, are more directed at the applicant versus staff. There might be a few that I'll jump in and go ahead and just address as I go through, because they are a staff level question. I'm probably going to defer to our attorney on a couple of them. But the first person who got up, Tamara Edwards, question about type of children in the home and behavioral issues and staffing qualifications. Brad Fitch asked a question about the 150 families who signed the petition. How does the applicant know the project will have a light impact on the neighborhood? What will the property look like 5 to 10 years from now? And can the applicant promise that only invalid children will be on the property? So those really are questions, I think, for the applicant, not so much staff level. Maureen Owens asked about the impacts of an alarm system. Ask about kids who have been arrested and then are on site, and ask if there would be backgrounds done on the residents that are there. Again, I believe those would all be deferred to the applicant. Suzanne Fern asked about additional staff for daily needs. It's been stated already that they require 1 staff member per 3 kids in the home. Her question was, what about things like laundry, cooking, just day-to-day activities kind of outside of the direct care of the kid? Question about staffing levels, retaining. Are they going to use E-Verify, contracted employees versus direct hire employees? would they agree to use E-Verify system when hiring? She did ask if there were any potential conflicts of interest with commissioners comparing us to Pine Top Lakeside. I will state on that one, myself and our attorney have discussed that with each other. Nothing has been brought to our attention by any commissioners, and we are not aware of any conflicts of interest based on just where you live, general things like that. There would be no conflicts. So, Jeff McNeil asked, had concerns with traffic. He had concerns with the driveway width. This was brought up by several people. I actually did do kind of a site visit for this. Went out and measured, used my free Harbor Freight tape measure. So take that for what it was worth. That driveway is about 15 feet wide. So if they were going to utilize it for vehicles parking next to each other, that driveway would need to be widened out. A typical parking space is approximately, well, it's 9 feet wide. When you drive through Walmart, any of those places, those parking stalls are 9 feet wide. So to accommodate two vehicles parked next to each other would need to be at least 18 feet based on that. So they'd need to widen it out a little bit. He asked about escape risk and then home values. Again, I would defer those to the applicant. Ashley Fitz had concerns regarding loud noises and flashing lights, as well as setbacks to property lines and proximity to neighbors. She did pass out some pictures that she had taken. That looked like it was pretty consistent with the site plan that had been provided by the applicant that was shown on the overhead while she was discussing that. Debbie Stoffel, and I apologize if I'm getting these names wrong. I'm doing my best, so is that correct? Okay, thank you. Had concerns about property rights, asked if this could be turned down based on property rights, and the other group homes if there are complaints. I would probably defer the second question to our attorney. Can this be turned down based on property rights? The other group homes complaints, I'll tell you, staff does receive complaints from time to time with the other group homes that are here. These are more of a senior living type group home, assisted living type situation. The concerns we get are related to parking. Most of them are on smaller lots than this, 7,000 square foot lots. And when they do a shift change, sometimes they don't coordinate well, and they end up with a car parked out in the street while the staff is changing over. Again, this property and the condition of the staff is recommending is that all parking be on site. And it's based on the size of the property, there is room to be able to do that and not have to park in the street. Daniel Brewer, not really a lot of questions there. He did state the need for this type of facility in the area. He was also concerned with potential discrimination issues if this was turned down. Robert Draper, question about the roadway. Staff agrees with what he's saying there. Again, my trusty Harbor Freight tape measure says that roadway is about 19 feet wide right there. That is narrow. That does not meet our existing code requirements. If that street was being built today, it would be wider. Again, that goes back to staff's recommendation that the parking be on site. He was concerned about a significant increase in traffic, particularly large vehicles such as vans and ambulances. Also brought up noise, traffic safety, staffing levels, and staffing retention and qualifications. Suzanne Fern, again, asked about distance requirements. I'll go ahead and answer that. Just recently, there was a court case, was it Indiana, Illinois, where a community had distance requirements that said you had to have a certain amount of feet between facilities of this type. The court there struck that down. They said you don't have distance requirements between people who don't fall into this category. You can't have distance requirements for people who do. So there are no distance requirements under city code based on court cases and things like that. We don't believe that you can have a distance requirement between facilities such as this. Deborah Brewer, is that right? Debbie? Okay. She just pointed out the level of regulations that are required for this type of facility. Tammy Rothermel indicates she's opposed to commercial businesses in a residential neighborhood, concerned that this project may change, that currently they're talking mostly bedridden, but will that remain the same moving forward? Concerned about lack of supervision. Wanted to ask, or did ask, that if this was approved, that conditions be placed. One would be that this would be contingent upon receiving proper licensing through the state, the DDD, also the Arizona Department of Health Services. That is a staff recommendation, condition number one. She also was concerned that flashing lights could be a problem. Brad Fitch asked if they're going to be able to retain qualified staff. And he had the two big concerns, the health of the kids, and then kind of everything else tied in, the noise, the traffic, those things that we'd heard. John Hefner, concerned about the volume of traffic that this would bring in. So generally a single family home, the accepted amount of traffic that is generated by a standard single family home. And we understand that this can change, right? If I'm a single person, retired, living at home by myself, I may not leave the home more than once or twice a day, several days a week. There may be several days a week where I'm very involved in community groups, book clubs, pickleball, I mean, you know, all sorts of different things. The standard number that is accepted for number of trips per home is 10 trips per day. A trip is defined as every time you leave your driveway, that's one trip. Every time you come back into your driveway, that's a second trip. So when you drive to the store and you come back, that's actually 2 trips. Some people get a little nervous saying there's no way I go 10 different places a day. You might not, because a trip is one there and one back, counts as 2. In this case, we know from what the applicant has stated that there will be 2 staff members on site at all times. They are projecting 12-hour shifts. So that would be 2 employees coming to work, 2 employees leaving to work. That's 4 trips for that one shift. The second 12-hour shifts, 2 employees coming to work, 2 employees leaving work. That's 4 more trips. So they would generate about 8 trips a day. Now that doesn't include if, you know, they have a therapist that comes to the home, or, you know, different things like that. Those would be additional trips. When we talk about things like home occupations, that adds more trips to that standard 10 trips per day. I'll use the example of a piano teacher, right? They could have up to 8 under city code for a home occupation. You can have up to 8 customers a day come to your home. So if you got 8 piano students a day, that's again 16 more trips. That's 8 trips there, 8 trips home. So you're really starting to get up into quite a number of trips with just a standard residential home. I know this has been referred to as it's a business, and certainly it's owned by it's being run by a company, and they are collecting money and they are paying employees. So if that's your definition of a business, yeah, it would fall under that. But as far as traffic generation, compared to some other uses that are permitted in a residential zone, this probably does not rise to the level of what those other uses would. He also questioned driveway design. Again, there's room there. They can widen the driveway. They can make that bigger. Carolyn Walker, she asked, what is the type of the facility? I would defer that to the applicant. I believe that's been addressed. Asking, are they licensed, bonded, or insured? I would leave that to the applicant. Question, what happens if things go wrong? If they cannot comply with the conditions of their license from the state, they lose their license, meaning this no longer is able to function. If other things go wrong, I think we heard a fairly passionate plea from one of the other neighbors, but certainly there's other resources that are available. I mean, if kids leave, and I did receive a question from Mr. Fitch, just a phone call, asking what happens if one of these kids escapes, right? And my response was the same as if any other kid gets away. You know, you go looking for them and you call the police. Hopefully that's not an issue here. I can't guarantee that it won't be, but you know, that would be, those are your steps. Conditions of approval, yes, as represented in the staff report, there were several conditions of approval being recommended. Lead abatement was a concern. Any type of remodeling that they do on that house does have to be in compliance with building code and lead abatement procedures. She also mentioned other dangerous materials, and I can think of asbestos. You know, if they're going to be disturbing things, they need to make sure that they're following proper protocol there. Shift change, cars driving by and waking her up. I would defer that to the applicant as to when they actually project their shift changes being. I mean, are they 8 in the morning and 8 at night, or are they noon and midnight? The applicant could address that. ADA improvements, yes, ADA improvements will be required. We know that. We know a restroom at least will have to be modified. She asked about exposure to snow. This home does have a garage, so you know they could pull into the garage so the kids could get out, but I would defer that one to the applicant. She made the statement that Mr. Morgan was not allowed to have meetings with the neighbors. I know Mr. Morgan met at least once on site with neighbors. We also had kind of an informal meeting 2 weeks ago in place of the commission meeting. Staff, as well as both Mr. Housley and Mr. Morgan, were there. We were there just to answer questions. We were there for over an hour. So there certainly were opportunities at least. And then we heard from Ms. Day and appreciate her comments. So, Mr. Morgan, do you have any other?
I'll probably just like to address a little bit some of the questions on property rights and kind of the issues I've heard of not in my neighborhood and discrimination that's been brought up. So just to go back to what this is called a conditional use. So the property there, it's legal to have a group home in Arizona as long as it's licensed and follows those procedures. That's legally allowed on that property. So that's a property right for them. We're also trying to balance your property rights of the surrounding neighbors. That's why this is called a conditional use. We're here to put conditions that would lessen the impact on the neighborhood. Some of those conditions have been put in there. We can add more if we need to here tonight. But that's what it is. It's a balancing of those rights. Now, what was brought up was that the Fair Housing Act, the Federal Fair Housing Act, and the discrimination. I've heard a lot tonight about not in my neighborhood, not in this neighborhood. There's too many seniors there. There's too many this. Well, that's the issue that we're faced with is then if you're pushing it to another neighborhood, what's to say that's not the same there in that neighborhood? It could have the same concern. So what the Department of Housing has said is that these concerns have to be based on reasonable conditions. You can put reasonable conditions on the home. If you're worried about traffic, we put conditions on them. If you're worried about noise, we can put some kind of condition on that. But you can't deny it just because you don't want it in your neighborhood. The children that are there have a right to live in a residential setting, just like you and I have a right to live in a residential setting. And that's what the law says on the Federal Fair Housing. So we can't use our unfounded concerns or unsubstantiated assumptions about what's going to happen. It has to be based on something that's real, and that could be a safety concern. I think we've addressed some of that tonight. If there's other things that we can do to address that, then we can put those conditions on there. But recent cases will tell you that you can't just say, I don't want it in my neighborhood. I don't like it. I don't want it in my neighborhood. Again, they have the right to live there just like you do.
Thank you. I will, I'll open it up to Mr. Morgan to give you a chance to respond to a lot of the comments that were made if you would like to. Before that, are there any questions or comments from the commission for the staff summary that they just gave?
Particularly if I missed any comments or questions that you guys feel are appropriate that should be brought up.
Mr. Morgan, would you be interested in coming back up to respond to some of the comments?
I would love to respond. There were so many, I don't know that I remember all of them. So if there's any specific that the commission wants to hear a response to, I would love to be able to answer that. We've answered most of those in our meetings with the community the twice that we've met.
Commissioner Roberts.
There was a question about whether your staff is going to be, whether you're going to be licensed with the state, under the state regulations, whether your staff is going to be qualified, and whether you're going to be able to maintain sufficient staff to keep the home maintained in such a way that the patients won't be on the run.
So we will be required by the license that we have through the state. Since it is a nursing assisted group home, I can't hire just anybody to come off the street. They have to have a nursing degree. Each of them that will be hired in there will go through and have a card that they've been background checked, which I'm sure a few people in this audience have those with the credentials that they've had. So every single one of them will be known. They will not be coming from some foreign country without license. And that's requirements that we have from the state. As far as being able to employ, we certainly want those that we bring in as nurses to understand our vision, our love, our compassion for these children, and that's who we're going to hire. If they don't have that, they will not be in this home nor in your community. And that is something I'm committing to every single one of these behind me who's here. We have every desire and we'll do all that we can to make sure that that happens. That is what our vision is. We're trying to unite families. I'm not trying to make a buck. Is it a business? Of course it is. That's not up for, just like you said, Brother Trugaskis there. We want to be a good community member, and we will do everything in our power. That home will look as good as my home does, if that's going to say anything to you. And I know a few people know where we live from this community. They've looked it up. It's going to look as good as that. That's our desire. And everybody in there will be licensed to do what they need to do. I know one of the questions was also about feeding, laundering, cleaning. Most of that will be done. And if we need to, there may be another hire that's not licensed, but is of the CNA type that would come in and help with those activities of daily living that are necessary. But if they can be handled, it'll be handled by the nurses that are there. So that'll depend on the load of the kids and what kind of things that they have that they're dealing with. But I think we addressed that earlier with Commissioner Hatch, talking about the amount of people that would be in the home. It won't exceed what we talked about earlier.
other questions for?
I just want clarification. So when you're talking fully licensed, 2 nurses per 3
kids.
per 6, right? So 2 to 6, or
Right,
1
3
to
to 1.
3, right?
Yeah.
So just for clarification, because I've heard that a lot tonight, like you're just gonna hire off the street
Can't.
CNAs that can just, clean up bedpans.
I can't.
These children that are in this facility are critical care. I've heard that,
Yes.
right? They're not, they need a nurse full
Correct.
time.
Correct, and
Period.
that's all that will be in the home. If they don't need that care, then they will eventually be moved out, whenever the state has the ability to move them to a different home if that care is not needed. This home is 24 hours nursing care, and that's exactly what it is.
In order to operate the home, your licensing has to be done and regulated by 2 different entities of the state. Correct?
Correct.
If not to those entities' parameters of your business, they will be revoked.
Correct.
Which will cease your business.
That is correct.
Okay, so the probability of escape of the tenants of the property, low or extremely low?
I would say extremely low with the kids that will be in the home.
Impact to the community besides parking, maybe some excess medical attention, even though we have full-time nurses 24 hours on staff to handle this. Again, you have these children in your home right now, correct?
Correct. 2
Low.
of them.
Low. Your experience over a 10-year period?
Very low. Very low.
Probability of happening per quarter ambulance call?
I would say very low.
Once?
I wouldn't even say that, to be honest with you.
Once a year?
I'll give you that.
Low.
Very low.
So the stipulations might be, let's work on the roadways, let's work on the parking to lessen the impact, and let's do what we should do as a community to improve the lives of these young individuals so that they can live a better life if possible.
I would totally agree. And to address the parking issue, we talked about maybe putting a circular. That was from the neighbor, I think, whichever one it was here that gave that suggestion. So we had talked about it. Ultimately, what our intent is since there's a fence needed on that side, that those bushes there will be taken out. That gives us about another 6 feet right there. So if you add it to what was given, we're beyond what it would take to put 2 cars down there and get out. And so we've thought of these things, not because of the conditional use permit. These were actually things that when we went in the home that we were looking at already. We came into this with the community in mind and with not wanting to impact them at some high level that was going to cause some of the issues that are being brought out. So we've given that thought. And so we will address those. That will not be an issue, obviously, because it's on the condition that we need to follow in order to be there and do that. So.
Right.
Any other questions for Mr. Morgan while we have him up here? Thank you very much. All right, with that, I will bring it back to the commission for any discussion on this agenda item. Commissioner Roberts.
Because I live in the neighborhood, I'm a little bit more closer to the situation than most of the other commissioners. But I believe as a commission, during my tenure here and the times before, as a commission, we've always tried to do what we felt was best for the community. Even though there are times that people felt like we might not be considering all points, we do try to consider all points. But at the same time, personally, I don't feel that we have the right to say that because one community is more upscale than another community, that we should take things like group homes and lump them all together into a lower economic community. I don't believe that's fair. I believe as a community, we have a social responsibility to help all of our citizens and to be accepting and inclusive of all of our citizens. The phrase "not in my backyard" just rubs me all the wrong way. I live in this neighborhood. I believe that our neighborhood can and should support members of the community that have these disabilities. Just because a community says Torreon on it, or Fairway Park, Country Club Manor, or Sholo Country Club, or Bison Homes, doesn't mean that they should push or not accept this type of people. And when this petition was circulated, these are all good neighbors, good friends, people with good hearts who have a lot of compassion. And I believe that fear of the unknown, fear of what's going to happen in the future, fear of not knowing what's going to happen in the future has driven some of their concern. And I would like to think that we can overcome that and that have faith that everything will work, that with what Mr. Morgan and Mr. Housley have presented to us will come to fruition to the benefit of everybody. And that's my hope in placing this home here. I'll turn it back over to the Vice Chairman.
Anyone else on the commission for discussion? So with that, I will entertain a motion. Mr. Roberts.
I move to approve conditional use permit 602-04-249 submitted by Shad Housley of Legacy Community Homes to allow for a residential home for disabled children who require 24-hour nursing care located at 1400 North Fairway Drive, that being APN 309-31169 and 170A, subject to staff recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Commissioner Adams beat you. So, second by Commissioner Adams. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Seeing none, that passes unanimously.
Mr. Chair, it's been a while since we went through the staff recommendations. I would like to read those to the commission as well as to those watching so that they know what those recommendations are and how that affects this. The first condition as recommended is prior to allowing residents at this location, all development shall comply with all applicable federal, state, and local requirements, including Fire Code, Americans with Disabilities Act or ADA, and Arizona Division of Developmental Disabilities, that's the DDD that was referred to during the meeting, and Arizona Department of Health Services licensing requirements for group home. That's prior to them having people staying there at the home. Number 2 is a 6-foot solid material fence shall be installed on the north, south, and west property lines in accordance with city code. Number 3, there shall be no on-street parking. All staff and visitors must park on the property and out of the public right-of-way. I would like to clarify, if an ambulance does show up to the property, they get a little bit of an exception. You know, they have safety issues. They may need to park out by the street rather than pulling into the driveway. But as far as day-to-day traffic and things like that, they need to park on site. Number 4, as stipulated by the applicant, this group home shall not be utilized for drug or alcohol rehabilitation. And number 5, this CUP is non-transferable. Any change in ownership will require the new owner to comply with applicable code requirements in place at the time of ownership change. So those are the conditions as recommended by staff and adopted by the Planning and Zoning Commission. I will add that there is a 7-day appeal period. If an appeal of this is received, or if no appeal is received by the city clerk in the next 7 days, this will be considered effective. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Tregaskis. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, the call to the public. If there's any citizen wishing to speak on a matter that it was within the jurisdiction of the Planning and Zoning Commission that was not on the agenda tonight, you may do so at this time. Seeing none, I will not read boilerplate for that. Next, we'll move on to item number 7, the approval of minutes for the Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting of July 12th, 2022. Do I have a motion to approve?
I have a comment, a correction on those minutes. It shows some commission members present who were not present, I being one of them.
Oh yeah, it said you were absent, but it also said you were present. Okay.
Oh.
Commissioner Roberts, you said there were multiple?
I believe that I was not there. It shows Commissioner absent. It shows Commissioners present, Commissioner Hatch, and myself. And yet, if Commissioner Hatch was present, how could he be absent? So there has to be.
Those yeah, that was, yeah.
And just approve them with those.
I think we can approve them with correction, can we not?
Do I have a motion on the minutes?
I have a motion to approve with the correction.
With the corrections discussed, do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Lewis. All those in favor say aye. That is unanimous. We'll then move to item number 8, the summary of current events, and we will start at the end with Commissioner Adams.
Yeah, just want to thank all the public for coming out. You are an important part of this process, and we did hear you. So thank you for coming, and we appreciate you being here.
And I just want to thank you all for having me here tonight, and I'm grateful to be a part of this and honored to be a part of this city. Thank you all for coming out tonight.
Welcome to the commission. I am grateful to everybody who came. We don't have an effective city government if we don't have input from our citizens. I believe, I have a lot of faith in our staff and our city government and our public works people, and I'm grateful to all of them for all the effort, time and effort that they all put into it. And I'm thankful to be a part of this city. I have enjoyed my time here, and I'm grateful to everybody for being involved.
The Great Dane Sholo.
Commissioner Lewis.
I'm thinking about school starting last week, so it's a good time of year. Things are starting back up, so I'm mindful of that, and go Cougars.
And I will just echo what other commission members said. Just thanks to everyone who came out tonight. I also want to give a shout out to city staff, especially for being able to hang out and ask questions when the meeting was canceled 2 weeks ago. And so I think that's going above and beyond to take care of the community here. And so I just want to give them recognition for that, and taking the lead on that when not all of us could be here that night, and it was kind of unexpected. So just thanks for being flexible and dealing with all of those. And Mr. Tregaskis.
Not a lot to report. First of all, I'd like to welcome Commissioner Whitehead to the commission. As Commissioner Roberts alluded to, this was quite the meeting to have to cut your teeth on. But we certainly appreciate you and the other commissioners being willing to serve. Also, echo Mr. Lewis, school has started. Just please be careful, you know, a little bit of extra time around a school bus, a little bit of extra time in a school zone. May cost you 30 seconds in getting somewhere, but it could have a huge difference, long term. So, please just pay a little bit of attention. We also have new high school drivers. So pay attention to them too. A little defensive driving goes a long way. With that, I'll turn it back to Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dragaskis. And with that, seeing nothing else on the agenda, I will adjourn.